you can't sue Mark Zuckerberg for it. If somebody puts something libelous about me on his site, I can't sue him. Section 230. And so the government is threatening to take that from them if they don't censor people like me.
Right.
And that's an existential threat. And then the third thing, and I think this is the toughest thing for people to swallow, but you really need to read my book, in particular the last chapter of the book. But there's a deep involvement of the intelligence agencies in this project. And in managing the pandemic and using the pandemic as a pretext to advance the biosecurity agenda, which is this, ultimately the substitute for the erection of a surveillance state and complete control of the population, which necessarily means the abolition or the diminishment of traditional constitutional rights, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of association, jury trials, et cetera, which have all come under attack during the last year. But what I show is a lot of this was purposeful, that they drilled it again and again and again. The CIA drilled it with hundreds of thousands of first responder workers from Europe, from the United States, from Canada, from Australia. And that it has nothing to do with public health. It's about using, militarizing pandemic response, monetizing pandemic response. And these agencies also are deeply embedded in Silicon Valley through In-Q-Tel, which is the investment arm of the CIA. And it was DARPA, the Defense Department, that created the ARPANET in 1989. Or 1979, rather. And then, In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA investment fund, went out to Silicon Valley with both technology and with money and with federal contracts and invested in some 3,000 companies out there. And the CEOs of those companies signed state security agreements, which means they cannot talk about their relationships with the agency, as a condition for receiving that money and for receiving the federal contracts and receiving the technology. So you have, you have deep relationships between the intelligence community and the Silicon Valley companies, and a strong interest by those companies in erecting a national security state and a surveillance state, because they own the technologies of surveillance. And if you look at who got rich, if you follow the money and just say, cui bono, who got rich from this pandemic, you look at these stock portfolios of those companies and the stock value of those companies and how they, agree, whether it's Amazon or Microsoft or Facebook, how they're, how their value increased. They essentially put out of business Main Street America. And, people don't go, you go down to Main Street, even here in Palisades or Brentwood, where I live, and there's a lot of shuttered businesses. And you go to places like St. Paul and Minneapolis and just see the devastation of those communities. And everybody now is, using Amazon. Well, that's really good for Jeff Bezos. But is it really good for the American community, for American democracy? Of course, the intelligence agencies. So they have a financial benefit clamping down these controls and keeping people locked in their houses and making them obedient. And they also have pressure from the from the intelligence community, which has another agenda, which is the biosecurity state, the surveillance state. Kevin Shipp, who is a CIA whistleblower, and has said that, and his job was to sign these state security agreements, state secrecy agreements with people, and he says that there's 4.3 million Americans who've signed these agreements with the CIA. And, most of them are people who you would expect are as intelligence assets, people who work for a big company, big defense companies like Raytheon and General Dynamics, hundreds of thousands of people, and Boeing, et cetera. But there's also a huge investment by the intelligence agencies in Silicon Valley, and you sound like a nut. And I sound like a nut when I start talking about this stuff. But if you read the last chapter of my book, which is very, very well documented, and I think the most shocking chapter, you'll see that what I'm saying is fact-based.
The greedy bankers are about to do it again. In 2008, they crashed our financial system and nearly bankrupted the entire global economy. Then they received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And after, they demanded fat bonuses paid for by you, the taxpayer.
It turns out the banks haven't just been screwing the American taxpayers, they're also screwing over their investors. Turns out the banking industry is the worst place you could put your money, despite enormous taxpayer bailouts.
Now the bankers are back to take away your financial freedom. They lie and tell you that cryptocurrency isn't safe. They try to make it illegal for you to choose how to invest your hard-earned money. They lie and say cryptocurrency is used by money launderers and criminals. But look at the record. It's the banks themselves that launder hundreds of billions of dollars every year to the biggest criminal operations in the world.
Leaked documents have revealed how some UK banks have helped criminals, money launderers and Russians under sanctions.
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts as bank officials turned a blind eye to the illegality.
The bankers lie and say cryptocurrency is not a real investment. Meanwhile, the smartest CEOs in the world are buying billions and billions of it. The truth is that banks lie about cryptocurrency because it makes them scared. The banks take $9 trillion per year of your hard-earned money, and they are worried that they will finally be exposed. They're scared because crypto means they can no longer control your money, which means they can no longer control you. They are scared because you might actually understand your money and intelligently decide what to do with it. Now is the time for us to come together, fight back, and take control. It's time to educate ourselves, our families, and our communities. Because financial education means financial freedom. We know that cryptocurrencies will help us build the new decentralized financial system of the future. A banking system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A banking system where access to finance is a fundamental human right. A banking system that is free and fair and welcomes all humans on this earth. The DeFi revolution is happening. We, the people, can no longer be fooled. We choose to take control of our finances. We choose to take control of our freedom. We choose to take control of our future. Join us, and let's take back our financial freedom forever.